everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 10 of the holiday card series for 2014. I'm starting off this card with a background stamp. This is the Dotted Argyle background stamp from Impression Obsession. The ink I'm using today is Simus Stamp White Pigment Ink. This is a brand new ink to the Simon line, and it's a really great white ink. So I'm inking up this background stamp, and I'm making sure I get all those areas on the background stamp before I apply my cardstock. The cardstock that I'm using today is Neenah Desert Storm 80-pound cardstock, and I just pressed that down onto the background stamp, covered it with some scratch paper, and then used my hands to press that cardstock down onto the stamp very evenly. This gives a really great impression, and it's the easiest way to get a background stamp precisely and evenly stamped onto your cardstock. Even though this white pigment ink isn't dry yet, I'm going to move on to the next stamping. I'm using this border stamp from Mama Elephant Basic Borders, and the ink color I'm using is Hot Lips from Simus Stamp. This is a brand new ink color for them, and it's more of a pink red. I thought it would look really nice on this craft colored cardstock. So as I mentioned before, that white pigment ink is still wet. So after I stamp this border stamp in a gap in that Argyle pattern, I'll take a baby wipe and clean off my stamp because it does pick up a little bit of that pigment ink. But then I can go right ahead and keep stamping, and there's no real lag in having to wait for the ink to dry. I am going to have to wait for that pigment ink to dry eventually, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and keep stamping this border stamp. So once I got to the kind of center area, the border stamp wasn't long enough anymore. So I stamped it off to one side and then cleaned off my stamp and inked it up again, and then brought it in on the other side just to continue that line. And as long as you keep a little bit of a gap there, it should look just fine. So after I finished stamping it in that direction, I turned the cardstock and stamped in the other direction until I had completed the pattern. So this is what the pattern looks like. I actually let this dry overnight. I don't think you need to leave it to dry that long, but that's just how it worked out for me. I'm going to be using this Love You a Latte stamp set from Lawn Fawn. As you can see, it comes with matching dies, but today I'm not going to be die cutting anything. I'm going to be creating a little pocket on the front of this card to hold a gift card. I'm going to use a Starbucks gift card. I think it's such a great idea to pair these hot cocoa and coffee and tea images with a Starbucks gift card. I think it's really cute. So I arranged those images on a piece of vellum cardstock and then picked them all up with my stamp press. And I'm going to be stamping and embossing. So first I prepped that vellum with my EK Success Patter tool, and then I stamped the images in Versamark ink. If you wanted to create multiples of this card, this would be really easy because you have all of your stamped images on the stamp press and they won't move. So you could actually create this card over and over and over again. So I coated that stamped image with some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And I did want to mention that when I stamped, I very lightly pressed the stamp down. I noticed that if I pressed it almost at all, that it would kind of squash the stamp and it made the lines really thick. So it's always a good idea to use very light pressure when you're stamping onto vellum. So I heat set that embossing powder, and now I've turned my vellum over to the back side, and I'm using a Copic marker to color the mug and the heart. And I believe I'm using R59. It's just a nice deep red color. When you color on the back of vellum, it does sort of soften the color when you turn it over. So I wanted to use a dark color that would show up really well. I am eventually going to cover this with some Wink of Stella, but for now it worked well. I'm also using E59, which is a dark brown, to color the cocoa. And then I'll turn that over and you can kind of see the color that comes through. So now I'm going to be creating the pocket portion of this gift card holder. So I've cut another piece of vellum cardstock the same size. This is about 2.5 by 3.5. It's a little more than that actually. I think it's about 2 3/4 by 3.5. And I just marked the top center of that piece of vellum so that I could use a 1-inch circle punch to punch out a little notch. And now I'll use the top piece as a guide to punch the back piece. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of adhesive to this so that I can press it down onto my card and it will hold it in place while I do some stitching on my sewing machine. So I'm just getting this in place here. And I'm doing this because the vellum can kind of slide around and I don't want it to move around while I'm sewing. And this small bit of adhesive won't even show through, and by the time I have it sewn and everything, it won't even cause any problems. So just press that down onto my pattern that I've stamped. Then I took it to my sewing machine, stitched around the sides and the bottom to create a pocket. And here I am just trimming off a few of those strings that are left over from sewing. And then I'm going to be sliding that gift card inside. It did turn out to be a little bit of a snug fit, but I think that's a good thing because it's still able to be removed, but it's not going to slide around. And if I send this through the mail, the gift card will stay in place. So I'm sliding the gift card right inside this pocket and sliding it in. Like I said before, it is a little bit of a snug fit, especially since it had that adhesive in there at first. As I slid it in and out a few more times, it did loosen up a little bit, so don't be afraid to do that. The card base I'm using today is Basil Marshmallow, and I'm scoring that at 5.5 to create a top folding card. And then I took my gift card piece and I put some foam adhesive on the back. And I'm just adhering this down straight onto the card front. You could leave the card like this at this point. I think it'd be really nice. But I did want those red colors to kind of match, and I wanted to add a little heart on top of the one that I'd stamped because I wanted some dimension. So I took a little heart from the Simon Says Stamp Mini Heart die set. I just keep a bunch of those already die cut so I can use them whenever I need them. At first, I inked up that heart with some Hot Lips ink, but then I decided it was a little bit too bright and then coated it with that same red color that I colored the mug. So R59. And I put that down with a little bit of foam adhesive, coated it with some clear Wink of Stella glitter brush pen, and then I also coated it with some glossy accents. That's going to make it shiny, but you'll still see the shimmer underneath. Then I took some May Art Natural Twine and tied that around the very top of the card. And in order to get that twine to stay in place, I actually took a little bit of glossy accents and just squirted a little blob right underneath the bow and then pressed that down and held it there for a minute. Glossy accents is a really strong adhesive. Hi, Manny. Manny says hello. And here is some red Wink of Stella, and I'm just coating that mug. I wanted it to brighten up a little bit. It was a little bit too of a dull red for me. So here is the finished card. I hope you guys enjoyed today, and I will be back on Wednesday for another card in the holiday card series. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. Thanks for watching till the very end of the video. Here are 5 videos from the previous years of the holiday card series for you to check out. Manny says click on those in order to see some more card inspiration. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.